Sergeant Ixtel's upper membrane pulsed with barely contained rage as he watched the training simulation unfold. His 4 eyes tracked the small fighter craft piloted by Cadet Sarah Chen as it broke formation for the 3rd time today. The human's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic, completely disregarding centuries of proven combat doctrine. Cadet Chen, he barked into the comm channel. Return to standard plasma shield formation immediately. The response came back crackling with static and what he interpreted as insolence. Negative, Sergeant. Enemy formation suggests a vulnerability if we. This is not a debate, Cadet. But Chen's ship was already diving, plummeting toward the gas giant's turbulent atmosphere. The maneuver was suicide by any rational standard. The gravitational forces alone would crush most species, and the electromagnetic interference would render shield systems useless. Ixtel watched in mounting horror as the other cadets' attention shifted from their own training to Chen's reckless descent. The enemy drones, programmed to follow optimal combat protocols, adjusted their formation to track her trajectory. That's when Ixtel saw it. Chen wasn't diving to escape. She was baiting them. Her fighter suddenly cut its main engines, using the planet's gravity well to whip around in a slingshot maneuver that no alien physiology could endure without losing consciousness. The G-forces would be catastrophic. The 3 pursuing drones, operating on advanced combat AI, attempted to adjust, but their programmed responses couldn't adapt quickly enough to such an primitive and illogical tactic. Chen's ship rocketed up from below, her guns blazing. In the span of 2 seconds, all 3 drones were destroyed, caught in a crossfire of their own making. The simulation chamber fell silent. Ixtel slammed his appendage on the control panel, ending the exercise. The holographic environment flickered and faded, revealing the true training room. Chen's fighter pod opened, and she climbed out, her face flushed from the exertion, but wearing a satisfied smile. That smile vanished when she saw Ixtel approaching. "Explain yourself, Cadet," he demanded, his voice carrying across the chamber where the other alien cadets had gathered to watch. "Explain how blatantly disregarding every safety protocol and combat formation we've established constitutes acceptable behavior in this program." Chen stood at attention, but Ixtel noted the defiant set of her jaw. "Sir, the standard formation left us vulnerable to." "The standard formation," Ixtel cut her off, "has been refined over centuries of combat experience by species far more advanced than yours." His upper membrane flared, a sign of extreme agitation that made several nearby cadets step back. "Your primitive respiratory system barely allows you to process oxygen efficiently, yet you think you know better than generations of combat doctrine." "The maneuver worked, sir," Chen said quietly. "Worked." Ixtel let out a harsh sound that passed for laughter among his species. "Allow me to explain what would have worked in actual combat. Cadet, your inner ear balance system, already inferior to most spacefaring species, would have been completely overwhelmed by the gravitational forces. Your fragile skeletal structure would have compressed under the strain. Your simple circulatory system would have failed to maintain blood flow to your limited brain capacity." He turned to address the gathered cadets. "This is precisely why humans have no place in modern space warfare. Their inclusion in this program is nothing more than a political gesture, a misguided attempt at inclusive policies that will get people killed in actual combat." Chen's face had grown increasingly red during his speech, but whether from embarrassment or anger, Ixtel neither knew nor cared. "Sir," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious emotional response. "Another human weakness, their inability to control their biological reactions. The enemy can predict standard formations, sometimes unconventional tactics." "Silence," Ixtel roared. "You are confined to quarters for the remainder of the day. Tomorrow, you will run the simulation again, following proper protocols, until you prove you can operate as part of a civilized military unit." As Chen turned to leave, Ixtel noticed something that made his blood run cold. Several of the other cadets were studying the combat recordings, analyzing Chen's maneuver. One of them, a promising Arcturian cadet, was even running calculations on how the standard formation could be modified to account for the vulnerability Chen had exposed. Training dismissed, Sextol announced sharply. As the chamber emptied, he pulled up the combat logs, determined to prove to himself and his superiors that Chen's success had been nothing more than dangerous luck. But as he reviewed the data, a treasonous thought crept into his mind. What if there was something to be learned from these primitive tactics? He quickly dismissed the idea. Humans were simply too far behind on the evolutionary scale to contribute meaningfully to modern combat strategy. He would make sure Chen understood that, one way or another. Sarah Chen stood outside the Academy's primary training arena, her heart pounding, but her resolve firm. The past week had seen escalating tensions with Sergeant Dixtel, each training session becoming more unbearable than the last. After yesterday's incident, where he'd made her run basic flight patterns for 6 hours straight, while mocking her simian reflexes, she'd finally reached her breaking point. Word of her challenge had spread quickly through the Academy. Now, nearly 300 cadets and instructors packed the observation galleries, eager to watch the unprecedented confrontation. No human had ever formally challenged an instructor in the Academy's history. The arena's massive doors parted with a hydraulic hiss. Chen walked in, wearing only basic training armor. She'd deliberately chosen the simplified gear, knowing it would anger Dixtel further. As if on cue, murmurs rippled through the crowd when Sergeant Dixtel entered from the opposite side, his massive frame encased in full combat augmentation gear. Still determined to embarrass yourself, Cadet. Dixtel's voice boomed across the arena. His combat suit gleamed under the harsh lights, its neural interfaces pulsing with power. Your last chance to withdraw with some dignity intact. Chen settled into a ready stance. The terms remain the same, Sergeant. If I win, the personal attacks and ridicule stop. We maintain a professional training relationship. And when you lose, Dixtel's upper membrane flickered with amusement. I'll withdraw from the advanced combat program. This drew gasps from the audience. The combat program was humanity's first real chance at proving themselves worthy of joining the Galactic Defense Force's elite units. Chen was risking not just her own career, but potentially setting back human integration by years. Terms accepted, Dixtel said, his combat suit's targeting systems already scanning for weaknesses in Chen's minimal armor. The arena's AI announced the start of the match. Dixtel wasted no time, his augmented legs launching him forward with devastating speed. Chen had anticipated this. It was standard tactical doctrine to overwhelm technically inferior opponents quickly. But Chen wasn't there when his strike landed. She'd already rolled sideways, her hand reaching for the arena's environmental control panel. Before Dixtel could adjust, she'd initiated a gravity fluctuation sequence. The arena's artificial gravity began shifting unpredictably. Dixtel's combat suit, designed to operate in stable conditions, struggled to compensate. Its neural interface flooded his system with conflicting data as it tried to adjust to the changing gravitational vectors. Chen, relying on her natural vestibular system and years of zero training, moved through the shifting gravity fields with surprising grace. She landed a series of quick strikes against Dixtel's joints, targeting gaps in his armor. Primitive tricks. Dixtel snarled, his combat suit's AI finally adapting to the gravity changes. This isn't combat, it's a circus performance. Combat isn't always predictable. Chen shot back, narrowly avoiding a plasma burst from Dixtel's gauntlet. That's what you've never understood. Humans don't survive because we're the strongest or most advanced. We survive because we adapt. The fight continued for another 10 minutes, Chen using every environmental feature to her advantage, while Dixtel's increasingly frustrated attacks became less precise. The audience watched in stunned silence as the human cadet repeatedly outmaneuvered her technologically superior opponent. But in the end, raw power and advanced technology proved decisive. Dixtel's combat suit finally developed an algorithm to predict the gravity fluctuations, and his next series of attacks drove Chen into a corner. The match ended with Chen pinned, Zextal's plasma cannon humming inches from her head. As expected, Zextal announced triumphantly, "Technology and superior evolution prevail." But the victory felt hollow. The gathered crowd had watched a human cadet with minimal equipment very nearly defeat one of their most experienced instructors. As Chen picked herself up, several alien cadets approached her, asking about her gravity manipulation techniques. "Your withdrawal papers will be processed tomorrow," Zextal said, but his voice lacked its usual contempt. Chen squared her shoulders. "No, they won't. We had an agreement. Check the combat logs, Sergeant. Article 17 of the Arena Rules. Any match lasting more than 8 minutes against a superior opponent is considered a combat survival pass." She smiled. "I didn't need to win. I just needed to prove humans can't be dismissed so easily." The crowd erupted in excited chatter. Zextal stood frozen, realizing he'd been outmaneuvered not just physically, but strategically. Chen had known she couldn't win in direct combat, so she'd changed the victory conditions. As Chen left the arena, surrounded by impressed cadets, Zextal's combat suit's AI presented him with a troubling analysis. The human's primitive tactics had revealed 12 potential weaknesses in standard combat protocols. He pushed the analysis aside, but a seed of doubt had been planted. Maybe there was more to these humans than he'd thought. The training vessel, Stellar Paradigm, drifted silently through the quantum filament field, its advanced navigation systems dark and unresponsive. Inside, chaos reigned as the ship's sophisticated AI continued failing system by system. Reroute power through the tertiary neural networks. Sergeant Zextal ordered, his appendages flying over the dead control panels. Around him, alien cadets worked frantically to restore their technological lifeline. Chen stood at the back of the bridge, watching the increasingly desperate attempts to reboot the ship's artificial intelligence. They'd encountered the temporal anomaly during what should have been a routine training mission. Now they were blind, deaf, and rapidly running out of options. "The quantum interference is cascading through all automated systems," reported Cadet Axel, their resident technology specialist. "The AI can't distinguish between past, present, and future states. It's corrupting itself." Zextal's upper membrane pulsed with stress. "Without the navigation eye, where?" "Not helpless," Chen interrupted, stepping forward. Several cadets turned to stare at her. After the arena incident last week, she'd earned some respect, but speaking out of turn to Zextal was still considered shocking. "Cadet Chen," Zextal's voice carried a warning tone. "Unless you have a spare quantum AI hidden in your primitive brain, I suggest." "We don't need AI to navigate," Chen said firmly. "Humans crossed oceans and navigated by stars long before we had computers. The principles are the same." Laughter erupted from several cadets, but it died quickly as the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated ominously. "Celestial navigation," Zextal scoffed. "In quantum space, your species barely understood atomic theory when we found you." A violent shudder ran through the ship. Through the viewports, they could see the quantum filaments growing denser, their ethereal light casting strange shadows across the bridge. "The mathematical principles are universal," Chen insisted. "The quantum filaments align with gravitational forces, just like stars do. Their patterns might be four-dimensional, but they're still patterns. Let me try." "We don't have time for primitive." Zextal began, but another violent shake of the ship cut him off. Warning lights flashed across dead panels as the hull creaked under quantum stress. "Sir," Axel interrupted, her voice shaking, "we're being pulled toward a Class 9 quantum singularity. Without navigation, we have maybe 10 minutes before we're torn apart." Silence fell across the bridge. Everyone knew what a Class 9 singularity could do to a ship. They'd disintegrate at the atomic level, their very molecules scattered across multiple temporal states. Zextal's 4 eyes fixed on Chen. "You have 2 minutes to prove this isn't suicide." Chen immediately moved to the manual observation post, an emergency backup system considered so archaic that most cadets didn't even know how to activate it. Her fingers flew across the controls, bringing up a basic stellar mapping system. "Look at the filament patterns," she explained quickly. "They're not random. They're responding to gravitational forces from nearby stellar bodies. If we can map their movements..." Her hand sketched calculations across the plotting board, using mathematics that predated space travel. "Impossible," one of the cadets muttered. "You can't plot quantum trajectories without at least a sixth-generation eye." But Chen wasn't plotting quantum trajectories. She was reading the space around them like ancient sailors had read waves and winds. The filaments told a story of gravitational forces, of spatial currents that existed independent of their quantum nature. "There," she said finally, pointing to a seemingly random pattern in the filament field. "That's our way out. The quantum eddies will be weakest there. You expect us to risk our lives on prehistoric navigation methods?" Textile demanded. Another violent shudder rocked the ship. The hull groaned ominously as quantum forces began to tear at its molecular structure. "No," Chen replied calmly. "I expect you to trust that sometimes the old ways work when the new ways fail." Stexel stared at her calculations, his advanced military training warring with centuries of ingrained technological dependency. Finally, his survival instinct won out. "Helm, follow her course," he ordered. The next 3 minutes were tense as the ship maneuvered through the quantum field using nothing but manual controls and Chen's calculations. When they finally emerged from the field, the bridge crew let out a collective breath they hadn't realized they were holding. As systems slowly came back online, a new crisis emerged. The ship's long-range communicators picked up a distress signal from Earth. Something had awakened in the Mariana Trench, something ancient and deadly. Sextel found himself facing an uncomfortable truth. They were about to need more of that primitive human wisdom. "Absolutely not." Sextel's protest echoed through the Galactic Council's emergency chamber. "Sending her is a liability. Earth's environmental conditions are already challenging enough without." "Without what, Sergeant?" Chen stood before the council, her expression neutral but her stance defiant. "Without someone who actually knows the planet." The council chambers hummed with tension. Holographic displays showed the situation unfolding in Earth's Mariana Trench. Mysterious energy signatures, unprecedented seismic activity, and what appeared to be ancient technological signatures awakening after millennia of dormancy. High Counselor Vexterra, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated concern, addressed them both. "This is not a debate. The mission parameters are clear. Sergeant Ixtel, your combat experience and technical expertise make you the obvious choice to lead. Cadet Chen's knowledge of Earth's environment and human infrastructure is equally vital. With respect, Counselor." Ixtel's upper membrane rippled with frustration. "Surely there are more qualified humans who've completed advanced Galactic Defense Force training." Chen interrupted. "I'm the only one." The truth of her words hung heavy in the air. The council had already assembled the rest of the team. A Proximan energy specialist, an Arcturian deep-sea expert, and a Centaurian archaeologist. But Earth's extreme conditions, its chaotic atmosphere, volatile tectonics, and vast oceans, made it a nightmare for most alien species. "You have 6 hours to prepare," Vexterra announced. "Dismissed." As they left the chamber, storm warnings flashed across their data screens. A massive electromagnetic disturbance was building over the Pacific Ocean, directly above the trench. "Listen carefully, Cadet," Zextel said as they walked to the preparation area. "In the field, I expect total compliance with standard protocols. No improvisations, no primitive shortcuts." Chen checked her basic environmental suit, while Zextel's team donned their advanced protective gear. "Those primitive shortcuts saved our ship last week," she reminded him. "A fortunate anomaly," he dismissed. "This mission requires precision and technological superiority, not luck and instinct." The journey to Earth was tense. Their ship, equipped with the latest atmospheric shielding, approached the storm system that had developed over the Pacific. Lightning crackled across the sky in impossible patterns, and electromagnetic readings were off every known scale. Atmospheric entry in 3 minutes, the ship's AI announced. Warning, environmental conditions exceed safety parameters. Chen studied the storm patterns with growing concern. We need to adjust our entry vector. These aren't normal storm formations. The AI has calculated the optimal. The textile began. A massive lightning bolt struck their shields, sending cascading failures through their systems. Warning alerts blared as their advanced technology began malfunctioning. All environmental systems failing. The Proximant specialist reported, panic evident in their bioluminescent patterns. The storm's electromagnetic signature is. It's like nothing in our databases. Chen was already moving. Switch to manual controls. Follow the cloud formations. See how they're spiraling. There's a clear path through the eye of the storm. That's suicide, the Arcturian protested. The gravitational forces alone. Another lightning strike rocked the ship. Their shields were nearly gone. Your choice, Sergeant, Chen said quietly. Trust the failing technology, or trust my primitive understanding of Earth weather. Ixitl stared at her for a long moment, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of intense internal conflict. Finally, he moved aside from the control panel. Chen took control, guiding the ship through the storm using visual cues and pressure changes that only someone who'd grown up on Earth would recognize. The ship shuddered and groaned, but her path held true. They emerged from the storm to find the Pacific Ocean beneath them transformed. Massive waves crashed against each other as the seismic activity from the trench intensified. Their sophisticated equipment, designed for precise conditions, continued to malfunction in Earth's chaotic environment. How do we proceed without proper environmental readings? The Centaurian archaeologist asked, clearly unnerved. We adapt, Chen replied, starting to unpack basic pressure gauges and manual sampling equipment. Sometimes the simplest tools are the most reliable. Sol watched her prepare the primitive equipment, remembering her words from their combat training. Humans don't survive because we're the strongest or most advanced. We survive because we adapt. Looking at the roiling ocean below, he had a sinking feeling they were about to put that theory to the test. The descent into the Mariana Trench challenged everything Sextol thought he knew about advanced technology. Their submersible, supposedly the pinnacle of galactic engineering, struggled against Earth's crushing oceanic pressures. Strange energy pulses from below played havoc with their navigation systems, and the water itself seemed to resist their presence. 7,000 meters and descending, reported Anxbel, the Proximant specialist. Her bioluminescence flickered anxiously as another energy wave passed through their vessel. The hull integrity is holding, barely. Chen sat at the manual controls, her eyes focused on the darkness ahead. They'd been forced to switch to basic sonar and pressure gauges after their quantum scanning array failed spectacularly at 3,000 meters. The ancient security systems are active, the Centaurian archaeologist, Dr. Ilks, announced. His tentacles waved over holographic displays, showing increasingly concerning readings. They're not just detecting our presence, they're actively adapting to our technology. As if to prove his point, a pulse of energy shot up from the depths. Their shields absorbed it, but immediately began to crystallize, the advanced nanomaterials turning brittle and useless. Impossible. Tuxtall examined the readings. These are 4th-generation adaptive shields. Nothing should be able to. Look. Chen's sharp command drew their attention forward. Through the reinforced viewport, they could see something emerging from the darkness. Ancient structures rose from the trench floor, their surfaces covered in patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Those markings. Dr. Ilks moved closer to the viewport, his scientific curiosity overriding his caution. They're similar to patterns found in ruins across the galaxy, but these are pure, undiluted by later modifications. They're not just patterns, Chen said, her voice filled with sudden understanding. "Their instructions." The others turned to stare at her. "Explain," Thextel demanded. "Look at how they're arranged. Basic geometric principles, mathematical sequences. It's a test." Chen pointed to different sections of the structure. Fibonacci spirals, atomic structures, simple machines. They're starting with fundamental concepts and building up. "A test of what?" the Arcturian deep-sea expert, Kral, asked. Another energy pulse hit their vessel, this time shutting down their quantum computers completely. In the sudden silence, Chen's voice was steady. "Of whether we remember our origins. The security system isn't trying to stop us. It's trying to see if we still understand basic principles without relying on advanced technology." Dr. Ilks's tentacles waved excitedly. "Of course. Many ancient civilizations believed that true advancement meant building upon fundamental knowledge, not replacing it. These security measures ensure that only species who maintain their connection to basic scientific principles can access their technology." Thextel watched as Chen began sketching on a manual display, breaking down the patterns into their basic components. "Here, this section is about pressure and fluid dynamics. And these markings, they're showing molecular bonds, but displayed in a way that would make sense to a civilization just discovering atomic theory." "But why?" Anxval asked, her bioluminescence pulsing with confusion. "Why make access dependent on understanding outdated science?" "Because advanced technology can fail," Chen said, looking pointedly at their dead quantum systems. "But the basic laws of physics never do." The structure ahead began to glow, responding to their presence. A massive doorway appeared, covered in more of the flowing patterns. "We need to prove we understand the principles before it'll let us through," Chen explained. "Not just our computers. Us." Sextel felt a deep discomfort as he realized the implications. Their advanced degrees, their technological expertise, none of it would help here. They needed to remember lessons most of them had dismissed as prehistoric. "Then teach us," he said finally, his voice carrying none of its usual condescension. "Show us what we've forgotten." Chen nodded, already beginning to explain basic mechanical principles that would make any modern physicist cringe. But as they worked through each challenge, Thextel noticed something remarkable. The more they relied on fundamental knowledge, the more responsive the ancient structure became. They were being tested not on their advancement, but on their understanding. And for the first time in his career, Thextel found himself learning from a human. The ancient control center sprawled before them, a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with deep earthly power. Steam vents released geothermal pressure in rhythmic bursts, and the air crackled with raw energy. Their team had finally reached the heart of the facility, but the real challenge was only beginning. "The terraforming controls are activating," Dr. Ilks announced, his tentacles waving frantically over what remained of their working equipment. "The energy signatures are building exponentially." Thextel approached the central control crystal, his advanced neural interfaces attempting to connect with the ancient technology. The crystal responded by sending a surge of energy through his cybernetic enhancements, forcing him to stumble backward. "Our augmentations are being rejected," Anxval observed, her bioluminescence dimming with concern. "The system seems to view them as foreign intrusions." Chen studied the crystal formations, noting how they resembled natural growth patterns. "It's not just rejecting our technology," she said. "It's looking for something specific, something organic." The chamber rumbled ominously. Through the reinforced windows, they could see the ocean floor shifting, ancient machinery awakening after millennia of dormancy. "We have perhaps 20 minutes before the terraforming sequence becomes irreversible," Dr. Ilks calculated. "Once it starts, Earth's atmosphere will be transformed to match whatever parameters are stored in its memory. Parameters definitely not compatible with human life," Kral added grimly. Chen approached the central crystal carefully, her unaugmented nervous system detecting subtle variations in the energy field. The crystal's glow intensified as she drew closer, its pattern shifting to match her bioelectric field. It's responding to her. HFY's bioluminescence flared with excitement. The human nervous system. It's close enough to the original designer's biology. Before Tixtel could protest, Chen placed her hands directly on the crystal. The entire chamber hummed in response, holographic displays materializing around her. But these weren't the precise, clinical readouts they were used to. These displays showed organic patterns, flowing like blood through veins, pulsing like a heartbeat. The interface. It's intuitive, Chen said, her eyes wide as she processed the information flowing through her. It's not meant to be analyzed. It's meant to be felt. Suddenly, automated defense systems activated. Crystalline guardians emerged from the walls, their forms shifting between solid and energy states. The team's weapons, designed to interface with their cybernetic targeting systems, were useless against these ancient constructs. Chen, Tixtel shouted, disengage from the crystal. We need tow. But Chen was already moving, without her usual tactical gear, relying solely on natural reflexes and adrenaline. She ducked under an energy blast from the nearest guardian. Her movements were unpredictable, organic, exactly what the ancient defense systems weren't calibrated for. The guardians, she called out between dodges. They're not trying to kill us. They're testing our reactions, looking for something specific. Tixtel watched in amazement as Chen's primitive combat style proved more effective than his advanced battle algorithms. While his systems tried to predict and counter the Guardians' attacks, Chen simply flowed around them, her movements guided by instinct and natural fight-or-flight responses. Of course, Dr. Ilks exclaimed. The facility doesn't want calculated responses. It's testing our ability to adapt naturally. The revelation hit Tixtel hard. Everything about the facility's design emphasized organic processes over artificial enhancement. It wasn't just a security system. It was a philosophical statement about the nature of true advancement. Everyone, power down your combat systems, he ordered. Fight like humans. The next few minutes were chaos as the team learned to rely on their basic instincts rather than advanced technology. It wasn't pretty. Several of them took hits they could have avoided with their usual gear, but gradually the Guardians began to stand down. Chen reached the central crystal again, her connection stronger this time. The facility recognizes us now, she said, not as advanced beings, but as living ones. We can access the controls, but what? We have to do it without our technology. Pure biological interface. She looked at Tixtel. Still think human physiology is primitive, Sergeant. As if in response, another Guardian materialized, its energy weapons charged. But this time, instead of attacking, it presented what appeared to be an organic control interface. The fate of Earth would depend not on their advanced technology, but on their ability to remember what it meant to be purely, fundamentally alive. The ancient facility's firing sequence initiated with a sound that seemed to vibrate through their bones. Massive geothermal vents opened across the chamber floor, releasing superheated water that quickly turned the surrounding ocean into a deadly pressure cooker. Environmental suits failing. Krull shouted, his Arcturian form already showing signs of stress from the extreme conditions. The heat is breaking down the molecular bonds in our protective gear. Chen watched in horror as their advanced equipment began to deteriorate. The suits, designed to withstand the harshest known environments in the galaxy, were literally dissolving in the superheated water, temperature approaching 150 degrees Celsius. HFY reported, her bioluminescence fluctuating wildly. Our biological cooling systems can't compensate. Tixtel's own suit was beginning to fail, its sophisticated temperature regulation no match for the primitive fury of Earth's geological forces. He watched Chen strip off her deteriorating outer suit, leaving only the basic pressure gear underneath. Everyone, get rid of the environmental suits, she commanded. They're only weighing us down now. Are you insane? Dr. Ilks's tentacles writhed in panic. We'll die without. Trust me, Chen was already moving toward a section of the wall where ancient diving gear hung, preserved perfectly after thousands of years. These suits were designed for these conditions. Basic materials, no electronics to fail. The chamber shuddered as another geothermal vent opened. Their oxygen supplies were running critically low, and the heat was becoming unbearable. The ancient diving suits. Textile stared at the primitive equipment. They can't possibly. They worked for Earth's deep-sea explorers centuries ago. Chen interrupted, already helping Expel into one of the suits. No fancy technology, just basic physics and human ingenuity. As their advanced suits finally gave out completely, the team had no choice but to don the ancient gear. To their surprise, the simple pressure principles and basic thermal protection worked perfectly in the extreme conditions. Our oxygen supplies are still critical, Krell noted, checking the primitive gauges. We have maybe 10 minutes left. Chen's face set with determination. Then I'll teach you something else humans learned long ago. How to make those 10 minutes last longer. She quickly demonstrated ancient freediving breathing techniques, showing them how to maximize oxygen efficiency without technological assistance. The others watched in disbelief as she explained methods developed by human divers centuries before space travel. Slow your metabolic rate, she instructed. Focus on essential functions only. Your bodies know how to survive. You've just forgotten how to listen to them. Texel found himself following her instructions, experiencing for the first time what it meant to rely purely on biological functions. Without his technological enhancements, he could feel every current in the water, every vibration through the ancient facility's walls. The weapon is still charging, Dr. Ilks reported, checking the basic pressure gauges. We need to reach the override controls, but the water between us and that section is nearly at boiling point. Chen studied the current patterns in the superheated water. There's a way through. The facility's design creates natural convection currents. If we time it right, we can use them to move through the hot zones. Like riding thermal currents, Dixtel realized, remembering ancient flying techniques he'd once dismissed as obsolete. They moved through the facility using these natural patterns, their primitive suits holding up where advanced technology had failed. When they finally reached the override section, they found it flooded with water hot enough to cook most organic matter. The controls are in there, Chen said, checking her basic temperature gauge. But even these suits won't protect us for long. Textel looked at his team. The finest specialists in the galaxy, now stripped of their technological advantages, relying on prehistoric survival techniques. He saw no fear in their eyes anymore, only determination. How long can your human body withstand these temperatures? He asked Chen. She smiled grimly. Long enough. Humans evolved in the crucible of Earth's harshest environments. Time to see if we still remember how to survive them. As they prepared to enter the superheated chamber, Textel realized something profound. Without their technology, without their supposed superiority, they were experiencing what it truly meant to be alive. To fight, to adapt, to endure. They were about to face their greatest test, not as advanced beings, but as creatures of flesh and blood, reaching back to abilities their species had almost forgotten they possessed. The Galactic Defense Force Academy's main auditorium was packed to capacity. Cadets from 100 different species filled the seats, their attention focused on the stage where Sergeant Textel stood beside newly promoted Lieutenant Sarah Chen. The events in Earth's Mariana Trench taught us something profound. This Textel addressed the crowd, his 4 eyes scanning the audience, something that challenges everything we thought we knew about advancement and evolution. Holoprojectors displayed footage from their mission, the team surviving in ancient diving suits, using primitive techniques to navigate superheated waters, and finally disabling the terraforming weapon using pure biological interface methods. We had assumed, Texel continued, that technological progression was a linear path, that each advancement should replace what came before. We were wrong. Chen stepped forward, activating a new holographic display showing the ancient facility's test patterns. The creators of that weapon facility weren't testing our technological sophistication, she explained. They were testing whether we remembered our origins, whether we could survive when our technology failed. The audience murmured as they watched recordings of the team learning to fight without combat algorithms, to navigate without quantum computers, to live without environmental regulators. Therefore, Zextal announced, the Academy is implementing immediate changes to our training protocols. Lieutenant Chen will oversee the new Fundamental Skills program. This caused a stir among the gathered cadets. An Arcturian raised their appendage. Are we going backward? No, Chen replied firmly. We're going deeper. Every species in this room evolved natural abilities that helped them survive on their homeworlds. Abilities many of you have forgotten because technology made them seem obsolete. She gestured to a new training area visible through the auditorium's windows. It contained obstacles that couldn't be overcome with technology. Natural barriers, environmental challenges, and situations requiring pure biological adaptation. Before any cadet receives advanced combat gear, Zextal declared, they must prove they can function without it. Before they learn quantum navigation, they must master reading natural space phenomena. Before they use AI tactical systems, they must understand basic combat instincts. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some seemed skeptical, others intrigued. A young Proximan cadet raised their hand. But sir, how can primitive methods possibly prepare us for modern warfare? Dextal's upper membrane rippled with what might have been amusement. 3 months ago, I would have asked the same question. Then I watched a human cadet save my life using techniques that predated space travel. The holoprojector showed one final image. The team emerging from the Mariana Trench facility, their ancient diving suits still intact while pieces of their advanced gear floated uselessly behind them. True evolution, Chen addressed the crowd, isn't about replacing our fundamental abilities. It's about building upon them. Every piece of technology you use should enhance your natural capabilities, not substitute for them. The galaxy is changing, Zextal added. We're encountering challenges our advanced technology can't always solve. But if we remember our origins, if we maintain our connection to the basic principles that helped our species survive and thrive, then we'll be ready for anything, Chen finished. As the assembly concluded, cadets filed out to examine the new training facilities. Zextal watched a group of them gather around Chen, eagerly asking about Earth's ancient survival techniques. Lieutenant, he called, approaching her after the crowd dispersed. I owe you an apology. Not just for my previous behavior, but for something larger. I had forgotten the most fundamental lesson of evolution. What's that, Sergeant? That the strongest species isn't the one with the most advanced technology, he said, his voice carrying genuine respect. It's the one that never forgets how it learned to survive in the first place. Chen smiled. Ready to learn some primitive human techniques, Sergeant. Ready to learn how they complement our advanced ones, he corrected. After all, true evolution isn't about what we leave behind. It's about what we carry forward. Together, they walked toward the new training area, where the next generation of galactic defenders would learn that sometimes the oldest solutions were still the best ones, not because they were simple, but because they were fundamental to who they were as living beings.